Hey, good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gadi Schwartz coming to you from Los Angeles, and here are the stories we're watching tonight, starting with a sitting president of the United States hitting the picket line with auto workers.
Unions built the middle class. That's a fact. So let's keep going. You deserve what you've earned, and you've earned a hell of a lot more than you're getting paid now. Thank you very much.
But what does this show of support mean for ongoing negotiations with automakers? Then a vote could happen any minute now that would finally put an end to the Hollywood writers' strike, and federal regulators, along with a bunch of states, are suing Amazon in a case that could change the way we shop online. Also, in tonight's cold case files, after more than 25 years, police say they are looking at a new person of interest in the murder of 6-year-old Benet Ramsey.
But let me assure you that I did not kill Benet. I did not have anything to do with it.
In an absolutely unprecedented move today, Joe Biden became the first sitting president to join a union on a picket line. He met with the auto workers on strike in Michigan.
Stick with it, because you deserve the significant raise you need and other benefits.
Let's get it!
Let's get back who we lost, okay? Yeah! We say them, it's about time for them to step up for us.
Now, Biden has called himself the most pro-union president in history for a long time. But as you can imagine, having the chief executive who oversees regulatory agencies joining the picket line is raising some eyebrows. And NBC's Maggie Vespa joins us now from Centerline, Michigan. Maggie, seeing the president there with a bullhorn, was this a campaign stop or was this a presidential visit?
You know, I don't think essentially he or his campaign at least would delineate the difference. I mean, he is an incumbent running for re-election, sure. And yes, that political endorsement from the UAW is still up for grabs, with a lot of analysts thinking it would definitely go to President Biden over former President Trump if he indeed becomes the presumptive GOP nominee, that being Trump. But that being said, the president has said he is here because he is the most pro-union president, again, sitting president ever. And again, he's the first sitting president to come here and stand on the picket lines. And that enormity, that historic nature of today's appearance is lost on no one out here. Basically, as soon as the visit wrapped, as soon as the president gave his speech alongside UAW President Shawn Fain, people here were aware of what he had said. They were cognizant of sort of the history that had just played out along their picket lines. And the consensus that we heard was everyone was incredibly grateful. Take a listen.
He said he'd walk the picket line, and he is. We've had other presidents in the past say if they're going on strike, they're going to put their tennis shoes on and walk the line with us, and they didn't. He definitely is doing his walking the walk and talking the talk.
You know, that being said, this wasn't without, I should say, political complications, or at least potential ones. During that brief appearance, President Biden was asked by one of the pool reporters if basically he endorses among the union's demands, their demand for a 40% pay raise. And the president said that he supports their right to negotiate for it, to bargain for it, is what he said. And that verbiage was really particular. A lot of people zeroed in on that because he wasn't endorsing the demand, saying the big three should give it to them necessarily. But he said, again, they have the right to bargain for that, and he supported them during their contract talks. So really walking the line there, as you point out. This was a bit precarious for him politically, but again, he didn't shy away from making history, Gadi.
Yeah, I could imagine walking that very fine line. Could this be a conflict of interest because his top aides have offered to come in and move talks along, or the fact that, you know, he is the executive and oversees a lot of the boards, like the labor board, that are supposed to be neutral arbitrators in these types of things?
You know, the White House has said the entire time that they specifically are not going to get involved, meaning the president is not going to get involved in any real way in these talks. I think a lot of people wonder when they hear about the president sending a team potentially out last week, and we know that visit was nixed, but kind of what role they would have in this. And the White House and our White House team has been really clear, based on everything that they've been hearing, it is largely always intended to be a symbolic role, a symbolic support, kind of helping offer both sides support as the two sides in these negotiations work to find find common ground. And keep in mind, sure, the president has those mediators who need to be impartial, but he's a politician. He's an elected official who, by the way, takes, again, union endorsements. So he is in a different role here, and the White House was very clear. The president was visiting as the president, him specifically, him alone, joining the picket lines before moving on to another unrelated stop. So this was a singular visit from one person and one person alone, they say, and that was President Biden. Gadi.
As for the union, from what it looks like, at least from their perspective, the interview that you just had, it looks like they clearly think they've got the president's support pretty much across the board. How does that bolster their demands?
Depends on who you talk to, frankly. Union members are confident, or at least hopeful, that this will apply pressure to the big three. Again, right now, they are still in active talks with all three. They say Ford has made the most progress toward meeting their demands, so they're kind of in a better place with Ford. They say GM and Chrysler owner Stellantis, they still have a lot of ground to make up between those two companies, those two of the big three, and the union. So, again, workers are hopeful. You can hear them out here that this visit today and former President Trump's visit tomorrow will help apply pressure, if for no other reason that it adds spotlight to these talks. But we should point out all three of the big three, again, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, have released statements basically saying that, listen, it's just us and the union at the bargaining table. It's us and the union, two parties solo, negotiating these three individual contracts, essentially leaving out any mention of politicians as far as having a tangible role in these talks. But again, basically people out here just hoping that these visits, that this spotlight basically translates to pressure on these companies amid these stalled talks. Gadi.
Maggie Vespa masterfully finding all that nuance out there on the picket lines. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Meanwhile, some breaking news just moments ago here in Hollywood. The WGA has voted to unanimously recommend that agreement that has been reached. The strike will end tonight at 12:01 a.m. And NBC News correspondent David Noriega joins us now. David, this deal was voted on and approved literally in the last few minutes. But the way that I understand it, is this approved by the executives, by like those that were negotiating, or is this what's going out to all the writers in Hollywood right now to look over?
This has been approved by the union leadership. It now has to go to union membership. That's 11,500 members of the WGA who have to approve this deal. We literally just got it minutes ago.
We are reading it as all the writers in Hollywood are reading it right now. Yeah.
Racing to try and, get our hands around this. What I can tell you from having talked to a few writers is that this is a union, it's a pretty democratic union. It's a union where the rank and file is pretty much in step with the leadership. What I heard is that writers saying basically they don't think leadership would have sent them a deal that they didn't like. They would only send them a deal that they would be likely to vote on. So the general expectation before the details came out was that this was going to be successfully voted on by the rank and file. Now, obviously, we now have the details. There's going to be a lot of work to do in terms of actually going through them and making sure, just from a top line look, it seems to hit all of the main points. Protections from AI, residuals, base pay and health benefits, kind of the main points that the union has been talking about from the beginning of the strike.
This is live here, so let's just kind of dive in here with the summary. I'm just going to read this. Artificial Intelligence 5, that's something that we've been covering for quite some time. Apparently, AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and AI-generated material will not be considered source material under the NBA, meaning that AI-generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. But it looks like right here, a writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services if the company consents and provided that the writer follows, the company policies. But the company can't require the writer to use AI software, it's really interesting because we're starting to see, look, in certain cases, AI is now here to stay. So it's up to the writer, but only if the company says it's okay, but not unilaterally used by the company without the writer's consent. Is that what you were expecting?
I mean, this gives the agency to the writers just from reading that language, and that's huge, right? That's kind of exactly what was at stake with a lot of these negotiations. Not only that, The fact that the writers were able to get that from the studios suggests that the actors should be able to get something similar. And this AI is one of the things that actors are also very worried about, right? You have people who've hosted shows like you have, for whom there's hours and hours and hours of tape that could be used to train an AI model to sort of create a digital, like a fake host for a show or something like that. Actors are super worried about that. They're going to look at this and think, you know what, if they got it, we should be able to get something similar. And all of this, ideally from the perspective of the industry, should be wrapped up in pretty short order.
This is one of those sticking points, though, that when it comes to writers, it's very different, the written word versus likeness and sound. I hate to say it, but this doesn't seem as clear-cut. You can't copy and paste this for the actors, right?
No, of course. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many pages it is because I'm just scrolling on an iPhone. But the devil is in the details, right? There's a lot of work to do in going through the concrete implications of this. And I think for that reason, the Guild members are actually going to have some time, right? It's not until, I think, the first few days of October that they're even going to be able to start voting on this, and then they'll have about a week's time to vote on it. That's because everyone's going to want to actually sit down and read through this and figure out what it means.
Do you see this getting ratified? I mean, based on who you've been speaking to?
Based on what I've heard from people, yes. There would have to be something really surprising in the details here that would signal a serious disagreement between WGA leadership and WGA membership, rank and file, which is not out of the question, right? That would be a big curveball in this story in the coming days. But based on kind of how this union operates and how it's operated very much in lockstep, sort of very cohesively throughout the course of this, again, 5-month-long strike, I think probably, if I were a betting man, I would say this will get ratified in October.
David Noriega, thank you so much. I know we interrupted your reading of this to rush into the studio and give us some of the details. This just came out. But like you said, the devil is in the details, and so we'll keep going through the details. David, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, millions of federal workers are on edge this week because as soon as this Sunday, they might be left without a paycheck. As of right now, the government is set to run out of funding at 12:01 a.m. on Sunday, September 30th. And if that happens, the government will shut down. And so far, lawmakers over on Capitol Hill are still going back and forth over bills that could prevent that from happening, leaving millions of Americans in federal agencies bracing for the worst. A shutdown would not only impact paychecks for 4 million Americans, it would also furlough some workers, impact food assistance programs like SNAP and WIC, cause travel delays at airports, and a whole lot more. Now, President Biden posted this video about the potential shutdown today, calling out House Republicans for not doing their job.
The Republicans in the House of Representatives refuse to stand up to the extremists in their party. So now everyone in America could be forced to pay the price. Funding the government is one of the most basic responsibilities of the Congress. It's time for these Republicans in the House to start doing their job, doing the job America elected them to do.
And NBC's Sahil Kapoor has more from Capitol Hill, where the Senate is trying to get ahead of all of it.
It's now a race against time on Capitol Hill to avert a government shutdown. The Senate just released new legislation that would keep the government functioning through November 17th, a product of negotiations between leaders of the Democratic majority and the Republican minority. It would keep the government open through November 17th. It would also include other provisions, including $4.5 billion in aid to Ukraine. It would include additional disaster emergency money for FEMA, and it would extend the FAA's authorities so they don't expire at the end of the month. Remember, there are only 4 days to go, September 30th, until that deadline. The Senate is going to have a difficult time passing this bill because they will need unanimous consent to hold a speedy vote before the government funding deadline expires. And even if it does pass the Senate, there's a big question as to whether it can pass the Republican-controlled House. Speaker McCarthy has struggled to get his Republican members in line, his narrow majority in line behind appropriations bills, and a number of his hardliners are threatening to overthrow him and remove him from the job if he were to pass a short-term funding bill with the help of Democrats, which ultimately is going to be inevitable if he's going to find a way to prevent a shutdown or fund the government in the foreseeable future, given that Democrats control the Senate, Democrats control the White House. It's a puzzle for Speaker McCarthy to navigate, and he declined to say how his House would respond if the Senate does pass this particular short-term funding bill. I want to play what he had to say.
How many times you've asked me a question this week, and it's the exact same question. It's always a hypothetical that the Senate is going to do something. I'm not going to take up hypotheticals of someday dreaming the Senate's going to do something. When they do something, come back and ask me about something.
Mr. Speaker. And he calls it a hypothetical there, you see, in those comments. But we will see if the Senate does end up passing that government funding bill. It could put pressure on Speaker McCarthy to find some way forward. He has said he wants to avert a government shutdown. Unclear how he does it. Unclear if he can tame his hardliners to pass a short-term funding bill to keep things functioning in the foreseeable future while they work on appropriations bills. Going to be a crucial few days coming up in Congress. Gadi?
Sahil Kapoor, thanks so much. And it's a video that has gone viral for the most horrible of reasons, with a horrific ending. Two teens allegedly joyriding in Las Vegas, laughing it up before mowing a former police chief down while biking, and he was killed in that accident. Now, those teens capturing the exact moment of the hit and run on their phones, and prosecutors say the video proves it was on purpose. And here's a little clip of it, but we want to warn you that it's disturbing to watch. And joining us now is NBC's Dana Griffith. Dana, this is one of those videos that flooded people's social media feeds for days.
Yeah.
What else do we know about what happened?
So investigators say this deadly hit and run, this intentional deadly hit and run, was part of a larger crime scene spree that day. They say these teens stole 4 vehicles and hit 3 people, including a driver of a white sedan. That video was also circulating, and a 72-year-old bicyclist who survived. And of course, ultimately, the 64-year-old retired police chief, Andy Probst, who, obviously, the story is about. Investigators haven't really revealed a motive. They're questioning whether they were influenced by social media to film this, thinking that it would be funny and a joke. We know that the video made it around to a student, possibly at their school, because that video was shown to a school resource officer, and that's what kickstarted this investigation that led to the second teen being arrested and these now murder charges for these 2 teenagers.
So one of the teens, 16, the other was, I believe, 17 at the time, but now is 18.
Correct.
Are they going to be charged as adults?
Well, they will be charged as adults, but here's the thing. Per Nevada state law, if you're charged with murder, that case automatically goes to the adult system, but you're not eligible for the death penalty if those crimes occurred when you were under 18. So this 18-year-old, his name is Jesus Ayala. He may likely be spared in that sense if he were to be convicted, so he can get up to 20 years to life in prison if convicted of this case. And just to talk about the victim here, this retired police chief he worked for the city of Bell. We're told he had a 35-plus year career in law enforcement. His family said that he loved to joke. He was into practical jokes. He was a Little League dad and an honorary Girl Scout.
Yeah, what a tragic loss. Dana, thanks so much. And new developments tonight in the world of legal problems for former President Trump. A judge has just ruled that Trump committed fraud for years while building his real estate empire. The judge says Trump and his company deceived banks, insurance companies, and others by overvaluing his assets and net worth. Now, this is all part of a civil lawsuit brought by the New York Attorney General, with a trial just days away from now. And we're going to break down what this means for the Trump empire. NBC's Garrett Hake has more.
Gadi, this 35-page ruling from a New York State judge really excoriating the former president and former real estate developer, accusing him of fraud throughout his business career, artificially inflating the values of his properties when it suited him to get loans against them, artificially deflating the value of those same properties when it came to insuring them, even in some cases inflating the value of the size of the apartment in which he lived, the penthouse in Trump Tower. Trump at one point claiming it was 30,000 square feet when it was only 10,000 square feet. That might seem like a small thing, but it hung on the judge's mind as proof that this was not some accidental decision, some bookkeeping error by the former real estate developer. That's the kind of mistake, the judge argued, would only happen because of fraud. The judge also said that this was done to the tunes of billions of dollars throughout the former president's business career. So we don't know yet what the financial penalty will be. Remember, the Attorney General has asked for $250 million in damages. That'll be decided at the trial portion of this, which which will begin on Monday. But there are already significant other penalties here. The attorneys in this case will be fined for making arguments that had basically already been thrown out in this court. And the Trump-based businesses in New York, so any of these Trump organizations that had operated in New York, will have to be dissolved, will have to be put into receivership. That would be a major blow to a president for whom the Trump organization, the Trump brand, is so much a part of his identity. Now, Mr. Trump's attorneys have argued that they're going to appeal this. They're going to appeal this at every possible juncture, both kind of here on the summary judgment phase and potentially at the end of a trial. So don't expect anything like the Trump letters to get stripped off Trump Tower in the next few days or weeks. But for the Trump family, the former president, his 2 adult sons, and the Trump businesses, a very bad day in a New York courtroom. Gadi?
Garrett Haake, thanks so much. And we've got a lot more ahead. More and more kids are going missing in Cleveland, almost 50 this month alone. So what's really going on there? Plus, later this hour, after looking into 1,000 DNA samples, police might have some new people of interest in the murder of Benet Ramsey. Yes, that case from 27 years ago. We've got that coming up, so you don't want to miss it. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. President Biden's dog, Commander, bit another Secret Service agent yesterday. Now, this is the 11th known biting incident with that 2-year-old German Shepherd. The White House has said they're working on getting more training for that pup. JP Morgan says it's going to pay the U.S. Virgin Islands $75 million to settle claims it enabled Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. Now, most of the money will go to local charities and victims' assistance. The bank also says it reached a confidential agreement with the former executive who managed the Epstein account. And California Governor Gavin Newsom signed several new gun laws today, including one that will impose an 11% tax on dealers and manufacturers for gun sales and ammo, becoming the first state in the country to do something like this. Now, the tax is expected to raise over $160 million a year for school safety programs. Now, take a look at this. University of Louisville football players stepped in to help flip a car over after a crash. You see them working together there to get that car upright. One person was hurt in that accident, but they're going to be all right. And check this out. 2 tickets that might have been used at Ford's Theater in Washington the night President Lincoln was assassinated back in 1865 sold for a whopping $260,000. Their original price back in 1865, 75 cents. And turning now to Ohio, where there are some very concerning statistics that are scaring a lot of people out there. Officials say so far this year, 1,000 kids have been reported missing. Almost 50 kids have gone missing in Cleveland this month alone. And those numbers have some police officials saying, yes, it is that bad, while others are saying, yeah, but a lot of these are likely runaways who do get found. Take a quick listen.
My 33 years in law enforcement, this just seems like an unusually high number.
In summer months, a lot of kids get antsy. They have lack of supervision at home, and they want to be out with their friends and, you know, go out into the streets and enjoy themselves in the summer.
And Shaquille Brewster joins us now. Shaquille, what is going on in Cleveland? If I was a parent there, I would be stressing like crazy seeing a headline like that.
Yeah, Gadi, you know, I've been having conversations with officials in the greater Cleveland area, and they're saying there's not one particular factor here. There's a couple of different contributing factors to these numbers. One, you'd think September, this is the return to school, so that is playing a part in this. We know the warmer weather in the summer, that is also playing a part. The big thing and the big trends that you're seeing here is that the vast majority of these cases involve people who are leaving intentionally, kids who are running away, essentially, and officials there also say that the vast majority are found and returned to their parents. But I talked to the president of a group that provides support to families with missing kids, and I asked him about this trend, specifically that headline that you read, that 45 missing people in the greater Cleveland area just in the month of September. Listen to a little bit of what he told me.
We don't want to send out some scathing alarm that there's like a serial abductor out there, our kids are just vanishing off the streets. You know, it's safe to say that the vast majorities are, in fact, runaways. But that's still a concern because these children are young and, you know, they think that they know everything, but they don't.
he says one thing to be clear about here is that despite these kids leaving intentionally and running away, that then makes them susceptible to predators out there. So this is still a serious issue, he's saying, and one way to help solve it is by staying alert to those wanted posters or the missing posters that are out there and the pictures of these kids that are sent out when they go missing. But he's saying it's a lot of factors that play into this rise in missing kids in the greater Cleveland area, Gadi.
It was such a good reminder. And speaking of one of those kids, there are cases where kids have been missing for months. There's a 15-year-old, Keyshawn Williams, who's been missing for 3 months there. What is being done to find kids like him?
Yeah, and that's the exact kind of poster I was talking about. Keyshawn, he went missing after going to a house party back in June 17th. He was reported missing on June 20th. His family is renewing their fight to help recover him. Police are investigating this as a possible abduction, but as recently as just about a week ago, you saw his family canvassing the neighborhood, passing out that flyer to individuals, telling people to be alert to see if they see him anywhere. That's just one of the things that you're starting to see. And, in that conversation I had with the president of that missing persons group, he said that it's all about the public. This is not something that police and members of law enforcement can solve on their own. It's about people calling in, being alert, sending in those tips when they find people or when they think they might even suspect seeing a missing child. You see the page there, that's from the Ohio Attorney General's office. So take a look at that. There are a lot of missing kids and a lot of people who want to be reunited with their families.
Yeah, so sobering to see all those names listed there. Our thoughts are with Keyshawn's family. Hopefully he's home soon. Jack Brewster, thanks so much.
You got it.
And coming up, Cold Case Files, one of the most talked about unsolved murders ever, is making headlines again 27 years later. We'll tell you what is new about the Benet Ramsey case. But first, they got to see this. This is an incredible, rare look at a deep-sea Dumbo octopus. That cephalopod was spotted more than a mile deep, casually hanging out while researchers explored the waters northwest of Hawaii. And yes, they are named after our favorite Disney elephant because the octopus uses its Dumbo ear-looking fins to move through the water. It is so interesting to watch. Just kidding. Apparently, Dumbo squid don't squirt ink, which makes that joke irrelevant or irrelevant. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the stories we're watching out here in the West. Members of the Hells Angels Biker Club have been hit with hate crime charges for a brutal attack on 3 black men. Now, this happened in San Diego this summer, and the victims were between the ages of 19 and 21. Prosecutors say the 3 men were chased, then repeatedly called a racial slur. One of the men was beaten unconscious. Another was stabbed. A third managed to escape. In all, 17 people were indicted yesterday, and prosecutors say it all went down possibly because one of the victims talked to a biker's girlfriend. Meanwhile, the city of Seattle is seeing a massive spike in murders, up higher than any time in the last 15 years. They've already seen more people killed this year than all of last year. And like a lot of cities across the country, Seattle saw a spike in violent crime, including murder, during the pandemic. And while many cities have seen those numbers start to drop since then, Seattle has seen the opposite. And a massive fight at a football game in Southern California last week is highlighted by this video of a sheriff's deputy slamming a teenage girl to the ground. The 16-year-old says she was knocked unconscious when she hit the pavement. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department says the teenager was trying to grab a deputy's pepper ball launcher. She claims the deputy pulled her away, causing her to, quote, land on the ground. And if it's Tuesday, it is Cold Case Night here on Stay Tuned Now. And of all the unsolved murders in America, there is one that seems particularly haunting: the murder of 6-year-old Benet Ramsey. And now, after decades of mystery, there might be some new leads in that case. Boulder, Colorado police have never given up in this case. And since her body was found the day after Christmas in 1996, they've been working with police departments and DNA experts across the country to keep a promise they made 27 years ago.
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, what do you want to say to the killer of your daughter?
We'll find you. We will find you. I have that as a sole mission for the rest of my life.
Mrs. Ramsey?
Likewise, the police and investigators have assured us that this is a case which can be solved. You know, you may be eluding the authorities for a time, but God knows who you are, and we will find you.
And unlike a lot of other cold cases, DNA testing has always been front and center in the JonBenet Ramsey case. It's eventually what cleared her parents. It could also be the source of these new people of interest. According to the messenger.com, there are several new people on police's radar. And earlier this year, they started to use new DNA technology to test previously unexamined evidence. Now, NBC News has not independently verified the reports, but we did get a statement from JonBenet's father who says, quote, "There is new leadership at the Boulder Police Department whom I met with recently, and I am very impressed with their professionalism and commitment to solving my daughter's murder." And joining us now is Jason Jensen. He is a licensed private investigator with a background in the JonBenet case. Jason, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Got to ask, what do you make of these new reports?
Well, thanks for having me, Gadi. Yes, it's enlightening, and it's a promise that they have kept with the family for all these years. It's nice to see that they're making good on it. Given the fact that there were some pieces of evidence that weren't tested, they were waiting for technology to advance to such a level where it wouldn't be consumed and lost forever. So I think we're at that point now where they're going to get some results, and maybe some of the test results will yield new persons of interest, as it's being hinted. And those are definitely people that they'll explore. I'm hoping that what they're doing is genetic genealogy, because that has been proven, starting with the Golden State Killer, to be an effective tool in investigating cold cases.
What about the DNA testing and things like genetic genealogy that have changed over the course of the last 27 years? And how do you see that playing into this case?
The old technology was STR and being compared to CODIS, which was, only covering about 12% of the criminal activity out there, and you had to have a conviction in order to have a profile to compare to on CODIS. So given the fact that they're using genetic genealogy, which is, familial DNA, they're going to have to start from scratch, because STR can't be applied in genetic genealogy. They need to use SNPs.
And starting from scratch, I mean, you're not just talking about starting from scratch from a DNA perspective. You're also starting from scratch from a list of names that is going to grow exponentially when you take into consideration everybody's family and the amount of pieces of DNA evidence that were collected here, right? So all of a sudden, we're looking 20-some years later, massive dragnet, right?
Yes. They're going to have probably a team in order to go through this with investigators and genealogists, because they have to work in tandem, where the genealogist will build a family tree, and then the investigators have to go collect comparable samples as a reference in order to make sure that there is some kind of matchup.
Now, I want to ask about this guy, Gary Oliva, who is someone who is already in prison for child porn. He's in the past, I believe, claimed that he was the killer. There's some new handwriting analysis out about the ransom note that was found that you've been looking into. Do you think that it could be this guy, Gary?
Well, it's highly probable that he had something to do with this, because we've had two handwriting experts that have compared handwriting samples of Gary Oliva from the mid-1990s, which is the time frame that the ransom note was written, and they are a very good match. On a 1 to 5 scale, we've gotten a 1.5 as a conclusion from the experts.
And when it comes to the advances that we've seen with DNA and analyzing DNA, again, you've got this massive dragnet. You've got a name that's going to be most likely prominently at the top of the list. Do you think that from the advances that we've seen, those could connect Gary to what happened?
In an ideal world, that's kind of what we're hoping for, right? Because he's been confessing it throughout the decades. We have a good handwriting comparison. If DNA does not lead to him, we risk the potential of reasonable doubt for somebody who does get named and charged for this crime.
Here's just hoping for a resolution of this case that has haunted the nation for such a long time. Jason Jensen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And there is some growing backlash tonight over taxpayer money going towards repairs for old Navy ships. Now, the repairs aren't the issue. It's actually how long it's taken to fix these ships, some of which are at the point that they're not expected to ever sail again. And NBC's Courtney Kuby has been taking a closer look.
Tonight, growing outrage that billions of dollars of taxpayer money is being sunk into Navy ships that may never be ready to go back into battle. Here in Norfolk, Virginia, we found old ships docked for delayed maintenance. Critics say they should be retired. Instead, the Navy keeps pouring money into repairs.
Maintenance for U.S. Navy ships is so backed up that we found this ship, the USS Vicksburg. It's been here in Virginia for 6 years, and we've learned it's not likely to ever go back out to sea.
The Navy awarded $500 million to modernize the Vicksburg, and it's still not done. Then there's the 31-year-old U.S. attack submarine, the USS Boise, under repair for 8 years. Earlier this month, lawmakers grilling Navy officials.
There's really no excuse. I think it's time for a hair-on-fire task force on this issue.
The Navy is cutting down repair times, but the backlog still costs taxpayers billions, according to Diana Maurer with the watchdog Government Accountability Office.
It just does not make a lot of sense to have a ship sit in maintenance for 6 years, performing no missions, where they're spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on a modernization that may never actually be put out to sea again.
The Navy has said each year they ask Congress to retire old ships, but lawmakers object because the repair work guarantees jobs in their districts, and others think they need as many ships as possible, no matter their condition, to deter China. The Vicksburg is docked near Congressman Rob Whitman's Virginia district. He tells us he's opposed to retiring the ship and blames the Navy for failing to manage the repairs. But now he says the retirement could be a given.
They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Was that a waste of taxpayer dollars at this point?
Well, I think you could certainly make an argument if you're going to now salvage that ship, so all that money that you've spent there is not going to relate to military readiness. Then yes, I think you could make an argument to say that that was a waste of money.
I think a lot of viewers might watch this and say, okay, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars and 6 years on this ship.
Yes.
And it's sitting there and it's not likely to ever go back out to sea.
Yes.
So how do you explain to them how that happened?
Well, they should be frustrated like I am, and I would say in several areas, it's a breakdown in execution of repairing that ship. This should be a lesson for us never to repeat this again.
In a statement to NBC News, the Navy Secretary vowed to extend the life of ships whenever possible. But he added that continuing to spend money on outdated systems is not a smart use of taxpayer funds and does not deter adversaries like China.
Courtney Kuby, thanks so much. And Amazon has become the one-stop shop for just about everything in our daily lives. But now the FTC is saying, hold on, the online giant is monopolizing business. They think Amazon is taking away customers' rights to fair competition and driving up prices to boot. NBC's Jake Ward has more.
Tonight, the Federal Trade Commission is calling the one-stop online marketplace a monopoly, one that illegally smothers competitors and takes money out of your pocket. For this small company selling educational toys online, Amazon is everything.
We live and die by Amazon, 90% of our sales.
The antitrust suit filed by the FTC and 17 other states today accuses Amazon of forcing sellers to pay unnecessary fees, pushing Amazon's own products even when it knows others are better quality, and manipulating search results to bury products from merchants who sell for less on other platforms.
If your products sell for less off of Amazon on marketplaces like Walmart, they will suppress your products on Amazon.
In a statement, Amazon says we don't highlight or promote offers that are not competitively priced. Amazon controls as much as 50% of the online retail market, according to a 2020 House Judiciary report. And the move follows urging from the president earlier this year.
Passed the bipartisan legislation to strengthen antitrust enforcement and prevent big online platforms giving their own products an unfair advantage.
But it also follows a string of recent defeats for the Federal Trade Commission.
The stakes for the FTC are significant, and it's trying to prove this case
using new theories that it thinks are well suited to our new modern economy.
The suit asks the court to make Amazon stop doing business the way they have, and according to the FTC, would give you more affordable choices online. But Amazon says if the FTC gets its way, it'll mean fewer products to choose from, higher prices, slower deliveries, and reduced options for small businesses. Jake Ward, NBC News, San Francisco.
Jake, thanks so much. And still ahead, Shakira was just hit with new charges in Spain that say that she didn't pay $7 million in income taxes. We've got those details and some other stories trending around the world. Plus, later this hour, it looks like a regular microscope is using AI to spot cancer in seconds. Dr. Sayal is going to be here to explain that game-changing tech. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world in 80 seconds. Kyiv is starting to walk back claims that Ukraine killed a Russian commander earlier this week. The Ukraine Special Forces said they launched strikes against the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters, killing more than 30 officers, including that commander. But today, video of him was shown on Russian state TV after Ukraine said it killed him, and Ukraine says they are now looking into it. And tensions are brewing in the South China Sea. A video surfaced today showing a member of the Philippines Coast Guard cutting a rope set up as a Chinese barrier to keep Philippine boats away from that area. As you can imagine, China is pissed. They warned the Philippines not to provoke them or cause trouble, but the Philippines are saying they won't back down. And the government in France is being criticized for moving homeless people out of Paris ahead of next summer's Olympics. More than 1,000 people have been moved from the French capital to one of 10 temporary shelters across the country. The French government denies that it has any connection to the Olympics. And Spanish prosecutors have charged Shakira with tax evasion for the second time. The singer is accused of not paying $7 million in taxes on her 2018 income. She's already facing separate tax evasion charges for 2012 to 2014. Her trial is scheduled to start in November. And over in Azerbaijan, dozens were killed, hundreds more hurt after an explosion at a crowded gas station. Now, that explosion happened in an area that has been the epicenter of a deadly conflict for the last few weeks now, and it is a separatist territory under the control of ethnic Armenians since 1994. But last week, Azerbaijan took back control of that region after a two-day military offensive. They're now trying to integrate it back into Azerbaijan, all while thousands of ethnic Armenians are trying to escape. NBC's Matt Bradley has more.
Yeah, Gadi, well, this happened at a fuel depot last night. As you mentioned, some dozens are thought to have been killed, probably around 68. That's the latest we have, but it could be more than 100 as those bodies start to be counted. Now, this was at a fuel depot, but it was functioning, essentially, from what we're hearing, as basically a gas station. People were desperate, lining up, trying to fill up their cars as tens of thousands of ethnic Armenians tried to escape that enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, Nagorno-Karabakh is an ethnic Armenian enclave inside Azerbaijan, just across the border from Armenia proper. And just in the past couple of days, earlier this week, the Azerbaijanis launched a 24-hour blitzkrieg onto that enclave and managed to essentially take it back after 3 decades of fighting amongst the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis. Now it looks as though that war is over. And the next thing we're looking at now is the prospect of ethnic cleansing. And that's what some observers have already been calling that, specifically the Prime Minister of Armenia. He's been saying that the some 28,000 Armenians who have now already arrived in Armenia from Nagorno-Karabakh, that this is an example of ethnic cleansing. So we can see the desperation that led up to this deadly explosion at this fuel depot. Now, what was preceding this was a 10-month-long blockade imposed by the Azerbaijanis against the Armenians. The Armenians would say it was an attempt to try to snuff them out and get them to either surrender or to leave Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, it looks as though, in just the past couple of days, that both have occurred, that Azerbaijan has successfully subdued a region that has been a thorn in its side for the past several decades. Now, what led up to this? Now, we're hearing from different people, different explanations. The Russians are a major player here. They were the ones who had been guaranteeing the peace between the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians. And now it looks as though they might have been asleep at the wheel. They were either distracted by what was going on with Ukraine or were dissatisfied with their erstwhile allies in Yerevan in Armenia and decided instead to associate themselves more closely with Azerbaijan, who they consider to be a nation that is more similar to their own. It's not a democracy. It has great access to oil and geographical access to the Middle East, which is stuff that that Moscow really savors. And also, Armenia over the past several years had been cozying up to the West, and that clearly had offended folks in the Kremlin in Moscow. But regardless of what started this latest conflict over the past several days, it looks as though this conflict of the past several decades is now over, and in a bloody way.
A bloody way indeed. Matt Bradley, thanks so much. Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. And we're talking about whether the continents crashing into each other could be a possibility to become one supercontinent. That's what a group of scientists are saying. We're going to explain. Plus, what if instead of waiting for months of a diagnosis, an AI-powered microscope could spot cancer in real time? We're going to explain how, so stay tuned. And time now for the future of everything, spotting cancer with an AI-powered microscope. That story in just a second. But first, artificial intelligence isn't the only thing that we worry about when it comes to existential risks. A new study from the University of Bristol is suggesting that the formation of a supercontinent could wipe out humans. Now, researchers say it would create an extremely hot climate with high levels of humidity, and then humans and other species would die because we would no longer be able to cool out by sweating. We're talking about like 160 degrees. But don't worry too much. This won't happen for another like 250 million years, which is plenty of time to get interplanetary. Well, here's a question for you. Have you ever wanted to hear a favorite podcast in another language? Well, take a listen to this.
The following is a conversation with Yuval Noah Harari, a historian, philosopher, and author of several highly acclaimed, highly influential books.
La siguiente es una conversación con Yuval Noah Harari, historiador, filósofo y autor de varios libros muy aclamados y altamente influyentes.
That is Lex Freeman in English and in Spanish, except Lex didn't actually record it in Spanish. OpenAI is partnering with Spotify to let podcasters replicate their voices and then translate them to other languages. Spotify says the new feature will allow listeners to connect with podcasters in a more authentic way than ever before. And if you've ever used Gmail's basic HTML view and you had a slow connection, well, sorry to report, but Google is saying RIP to the HTML view. Some people are against that decision, though, because they say HTML view has been really helpful for those who are visually impaired. That new change will go into the Google graveyard in January. Now, back to trying to spot cancer with an AI-powered microscope. Google is now teaming up with the Department of Defense to build this really interesting set of second pair of eyes for doctors, if you will, that goes well beyond what a human can see. The tool is called augmented reality microscope. It's not being tested on actual patients' scans just yet, but the researchers, and it's pretty cool. It's exciting. Pathologists all around the world are very hopeful that things are going to change pretty soon. And NBC medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal joins us to talk about all this. Dr. Syal, I mean, as a doctor, why do you need something like this?
Hey, Gadi, yeah, you know, when we see this, these kind of AI headlines, that question of why do we really need this comes up quite a bit. And I think for this one, you can make a pretty strong argument, Gadi, for two reasons. You know, one, we've seen really this explosion of cancer diagnoses, particularly in people under the age of 50. People our age are getting cancer like they just weren't in years before for a variety of reasons that we could do a whole segment on, Gadi. But the other thing is we've seen this shortage of people who actually make the diagnosis of cancer, a shortage of the pathologists that you just mentioned. Over the last few decades, we've seen about an 18% reduction. And, you know, just not only are we seeing less of them, but the ones that are still there are having to do more and more work, about a 42% increase in workload. So, Gadi, all of this combined, increased rates of cancer, but less people to diagnose that cancer, you can see why that would be a problem and why people are looking to sort of augment that workforce and take some pressure off of it to help people get a diagnosis faster.
And I could see something coming from the Department of Health, but the Department of Defense, what vested interest do they have in AI microscopes here?
You know, it's not unheard of for departments like this to fund medical trials or to get interested in new technologies. I know that, they're also interested in a pan-coronavirus vaccine, essentially a vaccine that would fight the common cold and all coronaviruses of the like. But Gadi, there was a CNBC report recently that sort of talked to some of the people behind this and asked them, why are you interested in this? And it had to do with pathologists out in remote locations. So, for example, if you have somebody, maybe the diagnosis is a little bit challenging and you're the only one on the island, it can be nerve-wracking. It can be unnerving to sort of make that final call. You have cancer, you don't have cancer, particularly if you tell somebody they don't have cancer, they don't need treatment. And if you're wrong, you can see why that would be a big deal. And Gadi, here in New York, pathologists can talk to each other, they can get second opinions, but out there, there is a need for a second opinion, and in this case, they're turning to artificial intelligence.
And how soon can you see this actually being used in the medical industry?
So they're in talks with Google, according to that CNBC report, Gadi. They're in talks with Google to bring this to all government facilities, hopefully soon. Hopefully as soon as this fall, we can see it in certain facilities. But Gadi, there's two problems here. One is that the cost, it's about $100,000 for this device. That's something that a mom and pop doctor shop can really afford right now. And Gadi, the other problem with this is just not validated yet. We don't really have that data to validate this in all different types of cancer. Cancer is not just one disease. Cancer can be very unique at a molecular level. So you really have to validate it in multiple kinds before we can really trust it to give that second opinion to say, no, he doesn't have cancer or she doesn't have cancer for sure.
So promising, but still tread lightly and carefully.
Exactly.
Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you so much.
Anytime.
And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.